Welcome everyone to the 2019 XP Billionaires Halloween Spooktacular. I am the Grim Reaper, formerly known as Rayfe, and I also have my other wonderful co-hosts here, and we'll introduce them one at a time. To the next, we have the Slayer of Chivalry. We have Sky Nightstalker. How are you doing today?
Perplexed, but good.
Awesome. And to my right, we have the disciple of Vlad himself. I ream you through with a railroad spike, Rogue. How are you doing today?
What? Okay. Apparently a lot more murderous than I was anticipating, but okay. I'll go with it.
As you can clearly see, I did not discuss the names with anybody here. I wanted it to be a Halloween surprise.
It was a surprise.
Excellent. All right. So, yeah, this is our Halloween episode. We're fortunate enough to be able to release this for you guys one day early than our usual Friday stream. So you're getting it on Halloween. So great. We're perfect in timing. It's fantastic. I love it. This week, we're just going to get everyone into the spirit of tonight by talking about some truly spooky or Halloween related themes related to your RPG gaming. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just give off a suggestion for a great spooky or Halloween related RPG for you to play. So without further ado, let's start with the Reaper himself, myself. So for me, I'm not a big fan of horror. I'm not a big fan of anything super spooky. Obviously, I like the more lighthearted and fun side of Halloween. So my game suggestion is exactly that. It brings out the inner child for the season, and my choice is Costume Quest, which was originally released for the PS3. This is by far like the essential RPG to get you into that fun Halloween spirit. And like I said, it's not because it's scary, but it brings out your inner child. It's just a joy to play. The game is about you and your twin sibling out trick-or-treating. Your sibling gets kidnapped by monsters, and the only way to find them is to basically keep trick-or-treating to weed out the monsters that are hidden within the town. What makes this such a really fun RPG is the combat system. You basically become whatever costume you're wearing. So the main character, I believe, starts out with like a cardboard robot costume he made for himself. He basically transforms into a giant robot to fight against enemies. And the only explanation for why this happens is the kid responding with like, Halloween's just kind of my thing. The other bit too is you can track down other blueprints for new costumes and then get new powers and basically kind of swap out if you wanted to, kind of like equipped gear. And just it gives you different skill sets, gives you different powers, gives you a lot more flexibility for the game. And some of the costumes you can use for like world map related things. Like, for example, like you can get the pirate's costume, which gives you a hook for a hand, which allows you to kind of go down like, what do they call it? Like zip lining down little ropes.
Yeah, you basically zip line on the hook. It's kind of fun.
The best thing is because, it's just this small little Halloween RPG, you could actually clear it in 10 hours or less. It's not a big time commitment. It's a lot of fun to play. There's also a sequel available for the game, which I didn't actually get around to playing. I know Sky did, but yeah, I missed it. But that is the game to ignite your Halloween spirit. Before you get into anything spooky, have a little fun first. All right. Sky, what are you going to use to spook all of your fans?
Well, mine is somewhat predictable for me. Shadow Hearts, particularly the original. I kind of consider it the quintessential spooky RPG. So you're fighting these terrifying demon monsters in this alternative dark history when you're trying to protect an exorcist from evil magicians who are trying to get their hands on her power. Everything's dark and spooky, and God, don't look too closely at the monsters because they are terrifying. Even the spuds are just like, why? Why do you exist? Now, its sequels went more towards the comical than the spooky. The original Shadow Hearts balanced that fascinating, creepy atmosphere without going full horror through use of its, more comedic moments and whatnot. And not depending on things like jump scares and whatnot to terrify you. So it would be my choice for for something spooky if you're not interested in going full horror.
That's an excellent choice. It really fits the atmosphere. I don't remember too much of the game, but I do remember that opening sequence where you do all this damage, and even I believe Yuri gets his arm lopped off, and it kind of grows back if I remember it right, or he reattaches it. I can't remember.
He reattaches it. He just picks up his arm, holds it up to his shoulder, and then it grows back together. And you're just like, okay, so this is not the world as we know it exactly.
Excellent pick. Yeah, that'll get people primed and ready for tonight. All right, Irene, what have you got for us?
Well, of course, for the folks who have listened to this podcast enough and watched any of my streams, the one who likes the horror games the best out of the three of us is me. And therefore, I raise your adorable picks with another predictable pick of my own, Corpse Party. Specifically, the edition that came out on the PS Vita or PSP a while ago, which is the one I played. Corpse Party Blood Covered, I think it was. So this is a game that threw open the doors of horror for me. It was a game that was actually so frightening, I had to put it down for a while. I wasn't actually able to finish it the first time I played through. I got to a specific point where I had to solve a sort of navigation puzzle and solved it incorrectly. And the resulting bad ending sequence was so horrible and awful to listen to. I put down the game and didn't pick it up for like another year. So again, like if you're looking for an experience that is truly terrifying and scary, Corpse Party does it. It's about a group of 8 students and 1 teacher who are trapped suddenly after performing a ritual in Heavenly Host Elementary School, a place that is constantly shifting and moving around them, a place that is inaccessible by any other means. So no one is coming to help them. There's no escape, and the best they can hope for, essentially, is to starve to death. Or actually probably die of thirst, because, like, there's no water. And meanwhile, the place is oppressive. It has this effect on people. It makes them do things they wouldn't normally do, including the spirits that actually live there. And as you go through, you're slowly uncovering the truth behind why this place exists, who the people are, well, essentially, what caused this great tragedy. Because underneath all of this is the murder mystery, essentially, of 3 elementary school children. And that's why, actually, Heavenly Host was destroyed. The school doesn't actually exist anymore. Your school sits on top of it. It was bulldozed, and a new school was built on top of the land after the murders, in fact, which were so terrible that it forced the school to close. So you're in a space that is impossible, that shouldn't exist, with creatures that are implacable, intractable, and unkillable. And you sort of have to figure out your way through it. And I guess somewhat spoiler, the best ending you can get is barely half of you survive.
A cheery game, this one.
Yes. But I think from a horror perspective, the ending and its themes are quintessential to the genre, where the characters come out, despite having been somewhat diminished by the experience. It's changed them forever. And that's sort of a key part of horror, is that even when the protagonist succeeds, they don't come out unscathed. And I have yet to see a horror game that really hammers that point home as well as Corpse Party. Fair warning, though, if you are squeamish, perhaps pass on this one, because there are some pretty gruesome stills and scenes. Like it's done in like anime style, but they use that sort of cartoony style to its fullest effect to really illustrate some truly gruesome stuff. Like yeah. So be careful if if that sort of thing upsets you, then perhaps pass or do a little bit more research first.
Fair enough. We'll definitely everyone take that into consideration. But yeah, you've definitely taken the cake for game choices. So well done. All right, so we've talked about games. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about monsters. Whether it's a horror-related RPG or not, what is one of the scariest monsters we've ever come across? I had to do some thinking on this one for myself, but I'm pretty sure I found my fear inducer. So imagine this. You have successfully gotten revenge on the monster that's put your friend into a coma. But as soon as that's over, the next thing you see comes from above you and casts dread into your very core. What you are seeing before you is Kubiak. This is from the dot hack infection, mutation, outbreak, and quarantine games. This is a monster of massive proportions. The best way to describe it is that it's a giant skull with big purple vein-like roots growing from underneath it. To get an idea of the scale, the veins are so large that in your final encounter with Kubiak, Kite and his party are literally running up these veins to get to his head, and there is still room for more people there. Kubiak's attacks also come with this blood-curdling scream when he does any of his major specials or when he takes significant amount of damage. This was back in the PS2 era. This is the first time I experienced fear when looking at a monster for the first time. It was intense, the timing was perfect, and everyone else's reactions were just as spot on as mine.
Yeah, I remember playing through those games when I was younger, and Kubiak just was this intense presence. Like, very intense. Like, he was overwhelming the first few times you saw him. Like, you'd be fighting things that were out of proportion with everybody else in the world, and yet Kubiak was just this, like, unattainable and unconquerable force. And the only reason you survived was it kind of chose not to go after you.
Yeah, now Kubiak came after you on multiple occasions, that much is true. And the reality is, you don't technically kill it. You find a solution that does get rid of it, but it is not by killing it. And it's impressive that, like, no matter what you tried, no matter how many encounters you had, no matter how strong your character was, this was the one monster that could not die in the game.
Yeah, it was on a whole other level than the other parts of the infection.
Well, yeah, it was essentially built in. There wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. I just remember being profoundly annoyed by Kubiak because you didn't know when you were going to be fighting it. And one time I took Balmung and Natsume into a dungeon, and we ended up fighting Kubiak at the end of it, and it took forever because none of us could cast magic worth a damn. So when he was immune to physical, it took forever. Because Kubiak switches between physical and magical immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he was weak to physical, like that went like
It's like, cool, I curb stomped him. It's over.
yeah, but then you do the amount of damage and he would switch almost instantly, and it would take like 3 times as long for him to switch again because you can't hit it for jack shit. I mean, the only magic you have is on Kite and Natsume, so and they're not very good at it, so
No, they're not. So it's like, yes, that phase of the boss fight went really, oh shit. Yeah, I remember that now. I wasn't quite as screwed because my standard setup was I'd have a caster in my party and I'd have like a physical beat stick, and Kite was sort of in the middle. I went kind of really balanced with my party all the time, which meant I was fucked for fights like Skate.
yeah.
But Kubiak, I was like, oh, I'm ready for you.
Yeah. That standard setup works great against Kubiak.
It does.
All right. Well, let's see if anyone can top that. Sky, what have you got?
Okay. So I'm gonna go with the final boss of Kodelka. The final boss has a name. I'm not gonna say it because it's spoilers. But the final boss of Kodelka has several forms, but it's always creepy. She skitters around like a spider, but on only 6 legs. And it's like I'll say this much, she was once human, right? So, like, her body is contorted chest up to be like an insect, right? So her body is like she looks like a contortionist with extra legs. And her final form looks like you crossed a spider, a praying mantis, and a woman. And at the end, this creeped the crap out of me. If you don't pick up a certain item, which Kudelka loses right at the beginning of the game, if you don't pick it up again at any point, you don't even get to fight the final boss. She straight up melts your party down to skeletons. Skin, muscle, organs, all gone. Oh, what adds to her creepiness is that the canon ending is to lose the final fight. And chances are you will lose the final fight. She's that powerful. And if you want to get what they call the good ending, but it is the non-canon ending, you have to grind.
So the canon ending is you turn to goo?
No. The canon ending is Kudelka has the item so that the final boss doesn't just like straight up melt you. It's like a magical pendant. So she can't do her like skin melting thing. But then you still have to fight it.
It's like, waha! I have deprived you of your ultimate attack. Oh, you've broken both my legs.
Yeah. Losing the final fight triggers a scene, and in the cutscene they show another way it's dealt with, but it has very negative consequences for your party. That is the canon ending. I've seen both, because after I got the canon ending, I thought, well, you know what? There's no special requirements or anything. You just have to win the final boss fight to see the other ending. So I ground up a bit and eventually managed to beat it. But yeah, it's scary. Like, it's particularly if you don't like spiders, you're not gonna like this boss, because she's like this contorted woman who moves like a spider
I don't like spiders.
with extra legs.
Yay!
Yeah.
No.
What she is super spoilery, but it is tied into the sort of main plot point of the series, which is the Emigre manuscript and how things always fuck up when the Emigre manuscript is involved. She's the first instance that the series shows, and it's terrifying. All right, Irene, you're up.
Well, once again, I'm going to have to sort of raise you with a sort of actual, somewhat horror game enemy, and that is the clickers from The Last of Us. Now, let's see if I can describe these things really well. They're, I don't want to say indescribable, but they're uncanny and gross. So, like, The Last of Us is a very unique take on sort of like a zombie apocalypse story, right? Because your zombies are brought about by spore. So everything's sort of like mushroom themed. It's like, oh, that sounds adorable. No, it is not adorable. It's not adorable at all. In fact, I would say I would take a regular zombie. Because, like, clickers are essentially the second stage of the infection. So the first stage is just the human, and the spores have invaded their brain and has taken away all rationality and reason. And they slowly devolve into, like, wordless, murder machines, essentially. They can see, but they can still be, like, hurt. They're still fleshy. Eventually what happens is the spores start to grow out of the nose. At least I'm assuming it's the nose. I'm making a big assumption here based on their, like, design. And, like, a multi-layered mushroom sort of starts growing on top of their eyes, on top of their head, their palates split to accommodate more mushroom, and they're blind. They're completely blind as a bat. They're still like humanoid, but they have these big, blossoming, multi-tiered fungal things growing out of their faces. And because they can't see anymore, they need to figure out a different way to find things. And their hearing is excellent. And one of the ways that they hear and make their way around the environment is echolocation. And to do that, they click. They make this horrible, horrible sound just as they go about their lives, just moving around an area. When they actually find something, oh, it's even worse. Then they start calling all their friends, and then you're surrounded by these things that all want to eat you. Also, they're immune to gunfire. The only way to escape a clicker is to shank one. And for a while in the game, like, you don't have that many shanks available. They're primarily an enemy you just do not engage. You sneak past them by throwing stuff and distracting them and making noise away from you so that you can catch their interest. In fact, the first time you really encounter the clickers, you're in an underground subway system. It's a station. And it's full of clickers, and it's dark. So it's you, Ellie, and I can't remember her name, Joel's friend, slowly picking their way through this subway station around these clickers as they, chirp and clack and move about doing their thing. And it's dark. Did I mention it's dark? And it's full of them?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't matter to them if it was dark, would it?
No, it doesn't matter to them that it's dark, but it matters to me that it's dark because I can't see how many of them there are. So, like, you pick your way through and you're like, okay, I'm safe. And you have to figure out, okay, where's the next one? Because you can totally hear there's more than one. And there were instances where I'd be picking my way through and then suddenly stop because I was about to, like, slam into one. Because I was so focused on the one behind me. Fortunately, they set the AI, like, the rules so that, like, if one of the two companions, like, run into a clicker, they don't give a shit. It's a bit immersion breaking, but, like, I'd rather that than have the dumb AI get me killed constantly.
That's fair, yeah.
And, like, they're very bitey.
You'd think echolocation wouldn't work very well in, like, a subway tunnel.
Well, it's a station itself, right? You're not necessarily in the tunnel. I'm not sure it works, like, paints like a full picture of their environment. More, it's like, there's something here. I shouldn't walk into it.
Yeah.
I don't think they can actually see like a bat can see, right? Where it's like, that's an animal and I will kill it. Because like you can move around in front of them without necessarily attracting any attention so long as you're quiet.
Well, yeah, because they'll hear you and they need to. They'd also need to be making sound too to be able to pick up on environmental stuff.
Exactly. I think they're able to say they're able to distinguish like there is an object here, and I shouldn't walk into it like a dumbass. But the nature of that object is likely unknown. So it's basically something makes a sound and they're primed to just attack it immediately.
Makes sense.
This is the second stage of the infection. There's a third. The clickers are still worse.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it sounds pretty terrifying. All right. So we've gotten to games, we've gotten to monsters, but there's just one last thing I think that would just help out. There's still a lot of RPGs out there that are not horror or Halloween oriented, but tend to like to throw in a little something spooky or, that might be in the spirit of the season. And I thought we'd go around discussing one of our favorites of that before we signed off for tonight. Let's start with me. I can never stop laughing at what I call Thriller Night from Yakuza Kiwami. This is not only the most unexpected moment in the game, but at the same time, just proves exactly how gullible and stupid Cosmic Kyria can actually be. So let's paint the picture. So at one point in the game, Kiryu is walking through the champion district at Kamurocho when out of the blue, he is confronted by a horde of zombies. Now, for those who haven't played the Yakuza games, with the exception of one game in the series, this is not a zombie game. This is not a horror game. This is a mafia-based crime GTA style beat 'em up game. Lots of different mixes there, but not horror. So the fact that there's an army of zombies is like right completely out of left field. So he fights off as many of them as he can. He starts running, but they just keep coming. They just like a typical zombie apocalypse, it just is never ending. But eventually, he encounters his quote unquote friend, more like forced rival, Goro Majima, who has also become one of the living dead. And then you have to fight him along with his army multiple times before the thing is over. Eventually, Majima confesses that everything is fake. He forced his family to dress up and be zombies for the sole purpose of helping Kiryu get stronger. It's made even more astonishing in that Kiryu believes that this is a thing that could have actually happened in life. It's ridiculous. It's quote unquote fear inducing. Kiryu really sells the fact that he's scared, which is really awkward and impressive. But it was a perfect fit, and it's something that for a Halloween episode, for something like this, you got to talk about because it is just, it's so ridiculous and it's wonderful.
Yeah, that was my thing. I was playing through that section. I was like, how are you buying this? It is the cheesiest B movie thing Majima's ever done. He jumps out of sewers and trunks, man. He showed up as a cop and as an escort. Why is this so hard to imagine? It's just another thing Majima is doing.
Well, exactly. Like something should have sparked off in his head right off the bat. He'd encountered Majima enough times in the game so far that something would have had to be a thing.
Yeah, like, encountered is the right word. Like, he'll be walking down the street and he suddenly pops out of a trunk and he's like, fight me!
That's Majima in a nutshell. Like, he's always doing something wacko bizarre on no notice. Why Kiryu didn't pick up on it is very strange. The thing about Kiryu is that he does have this sort of nugget of naivete that is really surprising.
He does. He does. It's very endearing, but also like, come on, Kiryu.
No, you're absolutely right. But yeah, that was my pick there. So, Sky, what did you like that was not out of a horror game?
So I'm going to pick the Spooky Forest from Atelier Liddy and Sewell. So it's not spooky at all. This is really just Halloween themed. It's one of the first paintings that Liddy and Sewell go into, and it has just about it has every kid-safe Halloween thing imaginable. Ghosts, creepy dark trees, jack-o'-lanterns, creepy cackling. This is also one of the first instances when you realize Sewell, who's kind of tomboyish, gung-ho, she's the one with the twin guns, is actually the scaredy cat. She's terrified out of her wits of ghosts. Totally terrified. Which made meeting Pamela, realizing that Pamela was a ghost, was very traumatic for Sewell. But anyway, this area, it's a fun area in a game filled with fun, unusual areas, and it just made me smile because it was just like, it's every kid-safe Halloween thing. It's like Costume Quest in that way, It's just fun.
And who doesn't love a little fun in Halloween too? So it's a nice touch, and it's something that I haven't seen an Atelier game do before as well. So it was really nice to see them kind of really express themselves with different options. So,
well, yeah, and they went with this system of magical paintings and whatnot. They could really just do whatever they wanted, and it was fun to see them explore that.
no, absolutely. All right, Irene, you've got one last chance to scare the hell out of us. Can you do it?
Well, I decided to maybe back down just a touch because at this point we're talking about games that aren't horror games. So let's talk about Final Fantasy XIV, one of my favorite MMOs. So it's not, I don't remember if it's actually like main story plot, but there is a sequence after the main game where you're going through and unlocking all the hard mode dungeons, and one of them is the Tamtara Deepcroft. Now, the original time you went through the Tamtara Deepcroft, you see this, you get a glimpse of this party, and there's three of them left, and they're arguing because one of them is dead, and it's because the healer screwed up, or at least that's what the other two are insisting. The healer's name is Edda. She's a human girl, and their tank, their fighter who died was Aver, her fiance. So she's pretty brokenhearted by the events of what happened in Tamtara Deepcroft, like way back at the beginning of the game. So when you go into Tamtara Deepcroft 2, one of the adventurers approaches you, because at this point you're like big and famous, and he's like, so I got an invitation to their wedding. He's fucking dead. So I don't know what's going on. And as you go through the Tamtara Deepcroft the second time, you realize that she's been like experimenting with necromancy and like trying to get a new body for her fiance. So like the enemies are labeled things like discarded will or half-formed corpse or defunct lung. Like there's just body parts all over the place. And there's like creepy organ music, and anyway, the dungeon ends with you fighting the reincarnation of her fiance, which is just like, oh yeah, I forgot this one detail back at the beginning of the game. Edda was carrying around his head, and she had been carrying it this whole time. So he's actually the final boss in that dungeon. And as you leave, she sort of falls to her death. It's very sad and all is very tragic. But the moment that really like drives it home that this is like their attempt at a horror game is that as you're leaving, they do this really great scene where her companion is thanking you for your help, and he looks over your shoulder and she's looming back there, just staring at him out from underneath the brim of her hat and grinning like a maniac. Ugh, it's unsettling. Anyway, I call it Final Fantasy's attempt at the Grudge because it kind of is.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. It's a really great dungeon, and actually, I like that they came back and used these characters again in the creative and in a way that I would not have expected. Edda actually features quite a bit in some of the side content. She's a very interesting character. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that's going to be our Halloween spooktacular for you guys. We've talked a lot about some scary stuff, some Halloween stuff. Whether you're in the mood for something lighthearted or something horrifically terrifying, we got you covered tonight. So, thank you so much for checking us out. Feel free to talk scary stuff with us on Halloween night through our social media. You can check me out on Twitter at BillionairesXP or Instagram at Rayfe, and you'll be able to check out my streams also at Rayfe on Twitch, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and Twitch. It's skyknight.xp on Instagram. And if you want to catch my stream, it's every Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Awesome. And Irene, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch at irogue_XP. And tonight, actually, I'll be doing a very special live stream of a little-known mystery game called Murdered Soul Suspect for Halloween. It's about a detective who must solve a string of serial murders after the serial killer actually gets him. So, yeah, you're a ghost.
Sounds perfect for the season.
Right? It's like you're solving your own murder. It's kind of interesting.
And don't forget to check out the transcript for our episode if you need it. It will be released a couple of days from its release. And that will be on our website at xpbillionaires.wordpress.com. And yeah, check out the transcriber, our XP Hobo, at XP_Hobo on Twitter. And lastly, for all big updates, news, and stuff that we're doing as XP Billionaires, you can check out our coffee page. That's coffee.com/XP Billionaires. Donation goes a long way, but word of mouth is just as good. So please send out anything you can, whether it's money or any posts that we put up there. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, give us a rating or review where you're actually listening to this podcast. I hear that helps.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that'd be great. All right. Well, that's going to be it for us this week. Enjoy your Halloween. And don't forget, the more candy you get trick-or-treating, the longer you'll be able to keep gaming tonight. So we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.